We've got three great panelists ready to share tips and advice around job, internship searching, really all things career related. So just a few housekeeping items. If you can kind of keep yourself muted during this session, I think that will help with the audio for everyone. And then students, please put questions into the chat. I'm going to kind of moderate the panel and we'll pull those questions privately to me or post those out where everyone can see. And then just depending on time at the end, if we can unmute and have more of a conversation, but I want to make sure we get through some good information. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce who we have here as far as panelists. We've got Ramel Bradley, who is the community director with App Harvest. If you want to wave at everybody, Ramel, there you go. Then we've got Angelina Reynolds. She's an HR manager with Mountain Enterprises, a pretty spring purple on. And then last but not least, we have Alex Wallace, who's the lead sales P&E recruiter with Divisions Maintenance Group. So thank you all three for being here. I also want to introduce, I've got two of my staff here, Jacob Murphy and Katie Maddox. Jacob and Katie, if you could wave. So that's our team in the Career Center. And then this event would not be possible without Dr. Session in the Eagle Black Male Mentorship. It was kind of his idea and to put this together. So excited to have everyone here. So we'll go ahead. I thought to get us started, we would just go kind of alphabetically as I just did the introductions. And if each of the panelists could share a little bit about your organization and what types of positions you typically hire for. So Ramel, if you're willing to kick us off with App Harvest.
Certainly. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, so App Harvest, we're an ag tech company, and what we do is we grow non-GMO, chemical-free produce inside of large-scale, high-tech greenhouses. By farming this way, we reduce water usage by 90%. And we also maintain higher yields than you would typically see in traditional open field agriculture. By locating our farms right here in Central Appalachia, we're just about in a day's drive of 70% of the US population. And we also reduce diesel use that are typically known or just quite frankly, destructive to our environment. So ultimately, by farming this way and by using these farming methods, we're able to save a lot of time and a lot of resources and grow fresh produce and keep our prices competitive. As far as job openings, we're a fairly new company. I believe right now we are just over 500 employees. We're growing pretty fast in our 60-acre facility. We have another 2 facilities that are online and due to open up at the, say, Q1 of 2022. As far as positions, we have a pretty diverse group of backgrounds and people from all walks of life, from PhD degrees, head growers and GMs are making almost a doctor's salary, all the way to our entry-level employees. We have crop care specialists, supervisors, team leads, maintenance, of course, and then kind of outside of the operations, daily functions inside of our facility, also pack house specialists, but kind of outside the engine that keeps our businesses operating. We have HR department, accounting and finance. We have a whole community team that focuses on our community programs, partnerships, and we also have a development department that focuses on our construction crews and our teams that go out and locate our next sites and get all of that stuff built. Yeah, I'll pass it on to someone else now.
Angelina, do you want to go next?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Angelina Reynolds. I am the HR manager for Mountain Enterprises, Mountain Materials, and Mountain Aggregates. We are a limestone mining, asphalt manufacturing construction company. And what that means is we're completely vertically integrated. We will blast the rock out of the mountain, crush it into smaller rocks and smaller rocks till we get to baby batter fines, ship that into our asphalt plants, mix that up and make an asphalt out of it. And then we will truck that out to our road crews and put it on the road. As far as our jobs, we are a seasonal company because you can't pave in the winter as much as we would love to. And we do full-time production on the supervisory level, but most others are seasonal. We do have HR, quality control, mechanics. We've got some estimating, some engineer jobs. So we're very diverse in the workforce as well, from entry level straight out of high school and an apprenticeship to an engineer.
Alex, you ready to share?
Yeah, so Divisions Maintenance Group, we take care of maintenance. However, we are non-asset based, so they're mostly going to be office jobs that we're looking to fill. Sales support, more of like a customer service, operational position. Of course, we have like the marketing, the HR departments, those small departments. Product and engineering is really taking off. We're looking for more seniors at this time, unfortunately, just due to our bandwidth. Getting that team up and going. Data and analytics roles. We have a couple of entry level financial analyst positions. So a little bit of everything. I will say, as the company continues to grow, we're constantly adding just more departments, and then as well as just more positions.
Thank you. So just want to remind the students, if you do have questions or anything they say in that moment triggers a question, please go ahead and put those in the chat, and we'll make sure that they get asked. I see we have one question in the chat already, but before we answer that question, I'm just curious, working with college students, we get a lot of questions around resumes. How do you make a resume stand out? What tips would you give to a college student who's trying to put together a resume? And Ramel, I guess we'll start with you again.
Well, typically, I would say things that we look for is experience in the field. Also dedication. We'll look at, your previous employer to see, what was your dedication and also your position. But ultimately, here at App Harvest, where it's not rocket science, we're growing fruits and vegetables. So ultimately, if you have a passion for working with plants, and those are the things that really stand out to us. If you do research on our company, if you have a good cover letter, those mainly the typical things I'd say that we're looking at our company.
Who wants to take it next?
I would reiterate what Mr. Bradley said, and then potentially do a spell grammar check. We do kind of go through those to make sure that they are uniform. You've utilized the proper grammar and you did a spell check. Just want to know that you put a little effort into it when you were doing this, and customize it to the position you're applying for.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people miss out on, is keeping it simple. We want to be able, as recruiters, we see a million resumes a day. So we want to be able to take a quick glance and say qualified, not qualified. Additionally, adding any work, full-time, part-time positions that you've held throughout college is really important, because that really shows that work ethic, that you were able to go to school and also hold a position while you were in school.
You mentioned, Alex, being able to look at it at a quick glance. What is it that allows you to see information quickly? Could you be more specific there?
Yeah, for sure. So I know that some people put fancy like headers and stuff on the side, and there's stuff everywhere. Honestly, less is more. So being able, company, title, dates, looking at it, looking at some bullet points, what you did, maybe milestones that you overcame in that particular position. Education, obviously, if you're a new grad, you may want to put your education at the very top and say like your years that you've been there, expected graduation. That way, if you're applying to an internship, we can say, hey, we're only taking juniors this year. We're going to take some sophomores, and we can easily look at that and say yay or nay. So I would just say bullet points and keep the jobs listed on one page.
So, question that's come into the chat. Ramel mentioned a cover letter. Curious, Angelina and Alex, do you look at cover letters? Is that something that you want from candidates? And then kind of a secondary question to that, if the cover letter is optional in the job application materials, do you give preference to someone who takes the time to put in that optional cover letter?
So they are optional with Mountain. I do look at them if they're submitted. It's not something that's required. I think if you take the time to do the cover letter and you tailor it to what you're specifically looking for and the contribution that you can offer the company, makes a difference for me.
Yeah, I agree 100%. They're optional for us. I guess if we're teetering between two different candidates, it could definitely make a difference. And I would say with higher level positions, definitely include one for the hiring managers.
Nice, and I would also agree. With us, it really shows the level of dedication, and appreciation for the opportunity to be able to work with the company. We have a lot of people that's from the region that have, submitted their applications and resumes with their cover letter, and just to be able to say, I'm from this region, or, I'm not from this region, but, I want to be here for these reasons. It goes a long way, when the recruiting team talks, and, just goes a long way. So I agree.
What I always say is a well-written cover letter is never going to hurt you. It's only going to help you. And I like the point that you've kind of made, tailor it, have that passion in there. You can show some unique things in there, perhaps. Another question that's come into the chat, and whoever kind of wants to take a stab at addressing this, what is your advice to graduates who are having trouble finding a job? Maybe because they lack the specific qualifications or because they don't have enough years of experience. Any advice for that student?
I would say know what you want to do and know what your long-term goals are. I talk to so many students who maybe they're like, oh, I don't know what I want to do in 5 years. If you can convince me that this is the growth, that our company has to offer that you're looking for, I think that that's really important, because if you are coming in as an entry-level employee, that requires more investment in training you. So we want to know, and we want to be convinced that you're going to stay with us long term. So I think that that is one thing, beyond the resume, that once you get on the phone, convince the recruiter or hiring manager that you really want this position.
Any of the other panelists have thoughts on that question?
I would agree. I think that knowing you want a career, not a stepping stone, matters. While it's fine to move around and get some experience, maybe in internships and things, when you're looking at a full-time position with a company, we want to know we're a longevity company. I've got people that have been here 40 years, and I don't imagine that that's going to change in the next 20 to 40 years either. So we're looking for people who really want to build a career, not just have a job to last for a summer.
Seeing no other thoughts on that one, kind of moving on to a little bit different of a focus. Just, we're in this pandemic, everything is shifted to virtual. Any tips you would give to students to, make that great first impression in a virtual environment? Or if you're still doing in-person interviews, what is it that makes someone stand out in that interview setting?
On the virtual side, I think treat it the same way as you would a face-to-face interview. Dress appropriately, be prepared, do a little research on the organization. and present yourself confidently. If your interview is the first time to sell yourself, so make me know that you believe that you deserve the position.
Yeah, I agree. I think that telephone communication skills are huge as well. If I receive your application, I call you and you answer the phone unprofessionally, it's kind of a red flag. You know, those small things make a big difference in this environment and really in general. If you know that you're out applying to jobs, answer your phone. Hi, this is Alex, or however you would in a professional demeanor if you knew that that were a potential employer on the other side.
Agreed. I agree with you both, ladies. And I would also add, if it is virtual, look into the camera. I know sometimes it could be difficult and people change on the screens, but make sure you stay focused. And also, I would add, that confidence goes a long way. And research, do your research on the company that you're presenting yourself to. Shows them that you care and you want to be there long term.
All excellent advice. Got a question kind of related to the interview. In the perspective of the interviewer, basically the question is, at what point should someone disclose a disability? So the student mentions that she's on the autism spectrum. Should she disclose that during the job interview? Would you have any advice for that particular situation? Everybody's saying no, don't disclose.
No, that would be something you would typically disclose during your new hire paperwork and you're looking at accommodations at that point.
So kind of in between the interview and the actual acceptance, maybe in that phrase or time frame, or you're saying even afterwards? Okay.
Yeah, we don't want to hear after you get the job. It shouldn't be something that even needs to come up, honestly.
So shifting gears a little bit, again, if you have questions, any of the attendees, please go ahead and put this into the chat. So we've talked about the resume, we've talked a little bit about the interview. When they move into that next stage, right, that kind of waiting after the interview, are there some additional steps that they could take to stand out?
Definitely, they could follow up at least weekly, whether it's a quick phone call or an email to the interviewer, just to check on the status of where they are and to assure that we know that they truly are interested.
Yeah, I would say a quick follow-up email after, within 24 hours of the interview, maybe even connecting with the hiring managers on LinkedIn if you're not already. A lot of times, especially in a virtual interview, the email addresses of all of the people that were on the call are right there. So using your sources and figuring out those email addresses and sending them just a quick thank you.
And I would agree with you both again. And I would also add, sometimes if you go through all of those channels in LinkedIn, it's also good to always follow up on social media and comment, and there might be volunteer opportunities with the company. So, stay involved and stay active.
Just looking at some of the students who are on this session today, a lot of them are very involved students on campus. What are your thoughts about, on-campus involvement, extracurricular activities? Can they have too many of those things listed on their resume? Is that something that you value from a recent college graduate? Maybe speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we value it. I will say we're a little partial to athletes as well. We know that it's a lot of time, dedication, all of that. So we know the commitment it takes. And then I would say, yeah, as long as it's not taking up too much of your resume and just adding a bunch of clutter, if they're relative, programs that you've been involved in, then I would definitely add those on there.
I see everyone else nodding in agreement. Another question, you mentioned LinkedIn. Any tips that you would give students for LinkedIn? If you're not familiar with LinkedIn, students, it's a professional networking site. I really encourage you to set up an account and develop a profile on there. We can certainly help you with that in the Career Center. So thoughts on LinkedIn? How are you using it? What makes someone stand out when you see them on there? Those sorts of things.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is our primary source for recruiting candidates. Both new grads, in almost all of our interns I've found through LinkedIn. So I would say it's a non-negotiable. If you don't have one, you can really kind of be left to the side, and no one can find you instead of you finding the position. And then I would also say, once you apply to a position, go ahead and try to look up that company and connect with some of the leaders from that company, so that they can see that you're interested. If they do accept your connection, you can send them a quick message and just say that you're interested.
And I would agree again with Alex and follow up with a pretty cool story. So we have a gentleman right now who's the director of our employee experience. He was actually doing some work in New York and heard about our company, App Harvest, thought initially that we designed applications to help farmers, didn't know that we were growing. But ultimately, what he did was he reached out to our leadership, our chief people's officer, and he just really expressed his interest in the company and love for what he's doing. And now we actually created a position for him. So, it's just about reaching out and, again, sharing that passion, using all of those platforms, which really worked out in Jason's favor.
Yeah, there were so many LinkedIn success stories of MSU grads that I've heard. And I'll just note here, Ramel and Alex both have over 500 connections on LinkedIn. So students, I would, recommend you connect with them and build your network a little bit if they're open to that. So got another question that's coming to the chat, which is a really good question, right? There's a lot of talk right now about diversity, equity, inclusion. How do you build an inclusive workforce? And so this question is, they want to ask if race gets taken into account for hiring. If you're Black, will you be picked over a white applicant because you're trying to build diversity? How do you balance those things in your corporations? It's a complicated question.
I would say no. We're looking at resumes. We're looking at qualifications. If you're hiring correctly, every candidate should be treated the same way, going through the same steps, the same interview questions, the same process. So we're looking for the best fit, whether it's those soft skills or maybe it's, a little bit of experience through an internship. So we're looking at solely your experience and your qualifications.
No, I definitely would agree. Race would never be taken into a factor of a hiring decision.
Agreed. And I would also add, sometimes, depending on, where our companies are located and, the amount of diversity, in these communities can also be somewhat of a challenge. So it's also very important that we do engage with our institutions, universities, community organizations, so that we are out there, actively seeking, the best people to work with our company. So that's also something that we all like to take very seriously.
I don't want to take from the expert time, but I want to jump back on that whole creating a job thing that I think you brought up, Ramel. That I'm telling you, I've seen it. I personally, it happened to me. It was a awful, not awful, awesome thing. And also, I've heard from some distinguished leaders from different aspects of industry that said that if they meet somebody quality, they don't care. They will, rather is making it, but they just want that person. And I'm not talking about anything. I'm not talking about racial, anything like that. Just the same line of discussion. I've heard from some high level leaders that said that if I see somebody with quality, I will figure out how to get them. So why did I say that? And I'm gonna stop. The whole interviewing, your resume, how you do your elevator pitch, all of these things are critical. So that's why I'm glad you all joined. So I'm gonna let them, the real experts, kind of make more sense for you.
That triggers a question for me around network, right? It's who you know, how do you get your name out there? We've mentioned LinkedIn is one way to do that. Any other tips, advice, strategies, success stories that you've seen?
So we really put a lot of focus on our referral program. So maybe there is somebody who also went to Moorhead that you could reach out to and say, hey, I hear that you're involved with this company. I'm trying to apply. That person that's already in the company can find the hiring manager. So referrals are awesome. And along with LinkedIn, I've had candidates reach out to, they've gone on, they've done some searching and reach out to maybe a salesperson from our organization and say, hey, I applied to this position. Can you help me? I really want to talk to a hiring manager or recruiter. And that salesperson has come knocking on my door and saying, hey, this person just reached out to me, and I think that it's great to use your resources and to go and be above and beyond. So that really makes their name stand out, to at least give them a call and see what they're all about.
And I've also partnered with nonprofit organizations that sponsor scholarships for people in the technical side of the world, the trade centers and things, even automotive and things like that. I've got a gentleman currently who is brought in. He went to school to be an auto mechanic, but he is now a construction equipment operator for me. And we went through an apprenticeship program, but that came through a nonprofit organization referral.
Ramel's in agreement. I've kind of got an oh, we got a question coming in here. So what makes an applicant stand out in an interview over the other people being interviewed? Like, what is that wow factor that really gets you? Is it that research and knowledge of your organization? Is it the passion? What is it?
I think it's a combination of both. It's the research, it's the passion for wanting the job, but it's also the way you present that. It's the confidence that you show in yourself, I think, that makes you stand out for me.
Yeah, I agree. And we really value soft skills. We do take a lot of new grads, honestly, and we appreciate taking them because they can come in, we can train them, and then we see them grow within our company. So yeah, those soft skills, time management, if you've got great communication, every time we send out an email and try to get the next round of interviews scheduled, if it's always professional, your phone conversations with us, if they're always professional, I think that we value those things a lot. If you're asking relevant questions when you're on a call with us instead of just filler questions, and we can tell that you're really engaged and interested in the position.
And I would agree as well. Those soft skills go very long way. You can teach, the technical things. Sorry, it's getting pretty loud over here. And maintenance and how to operate on a plant, but some of those soft skills, just how to work with people, how professional are you, team building, how can you communicate with people to make them feel comfortable? So I agree again, ladies.
So I have a question. What is your favorite interview question to ask and why? Maybe you don't have one, I don't know.
I would say depends on the round of interview that we're in. But I think that one of my favorites, and it really tells a lot about the candidate, are what are the top 3 things that you're looking for and that are going to be most important to you in this next position?
I would add to that, I agree that I want to know how they can be a value-added contributor to the organization. But I also want to know why. Why, of all the people I'm going to talk to, do they feel that I should choose them?
Agreed. And similar here, we're a purpose, mission-driven company, and we like to ask people, why App Harvest? We want to know why. It's about the why for us.
I mean, I'm hearing a trend or a theme here. It's not so much about your nuts and bolts technical experience as it is these other things, right? Your knowledge of the company, your eagerness to get started, those soft skills. So I'm curious, Do you feel like you're able to judge soft skills at the resume application process? And if so, what is it that you're using to judge soft skills there?
I don't know that you may be able to judge work ethic debate depending on their experience and their history, but I don't know of many other soft skills that you're going to get from a glance at a resume.
Yeah, I agree. And then just if they have grammatical errors and such on their resume, clearly they didn't take the time and effort to put into their resume that they should have. But for us, almost always, we're at least going to give them an initial call and see what they're all about and give them a chance to wow us if the resume is lacking a little bit.
So we've got a question that's come in from one of our peer coaches. We have a peer coach program in the Career Center where undergraduate students help their peers. And so she's saying, often I work with students on mock interviews and they struggle to come up with those questions to ask at the end of the interview. What are some questions that you've been asked by candidates that have really stood out as, wow, that's a great question to be asking?
What is a career path? To me, that was a phenomenal question. It's given you all that you need to know about me, but now I want to know, as an organization, how can you help me grow?
Yeah, I think any questions pertaining to the particular position, whether it's a sales position and they just want to know, what is the sales cycle like? You know, what does that typically look like? Things like that. Toughest parts of the job, where they've seen people succeed in this particular position. Like Angelina said, growth. What are my options after this position? How quickly you can grow, and then pertaining to the company, you know, how did they handle COVID? Did they do layoffs, job security, turnover questions? How do you give promotions? Is it based on seniority? Is it based on performance? Those types of questions.
And I'd also add compensation. You know, how much are you all paying us? What kind of packages do you offer? You know, benefits, amenities. Those are all questions that we thought were really good also.
Kind of a broad question here. You know, thinking back to when you were a college student, what do you wish you had known then that you know now? Or maybe what career advice were you given as a college student that was really helpful to you personally? Is there anything that you can remember or that stands out there?
I think the value of an internship in the career field. Without the chance to get my feet wet in that a little bit and to see if it's exactly a good fit for me and I'm a good fit for that type of position, that was invaluable to me when I was in college.
I mean, myself, I worked all throughout college, and everyone that I talked to said, you know, try to keep doing that, because after I graduated, I already had that experience. You know, I had a small internship that I had experience in a field. I didn't end up, it was not in recruiting at that time or HR related. But I just think that having some type of professional experience during college goes a long way, because then you have just those skills on how to use Outlook and just simple computer skills and life skills that you don't learn in the classroom.
Ramel, I'm curious from your perspective as a student athlete that's kind of, you know, gone a different direction with your career. What advice would you give to anyone who's particularly a student athlete and dedicated during college in one very specific thing, probably didn't have those internship opportunities and such?
That's a great question, Megan, and it's so funny. Alex is bringing up many important points, because as a student athlete, like, I kind of was not able to do anything else but study and dedicate myself to hoops, and that professional exposure would have been so beneficial to me at that point in time in my career. However, at the same time, um, being a student athlete, it really, looking back on it, it qualified me to be a leader in any field, in any department that I put my mind to. And it also taught me a lot of those soft skills, like how to communicate with different people, how to bring people together. Just so many intangible things that are just, really needed in the professional space, in offices, whether you're in a farm, you're in a field. So all of those things, fortunately, I was able to translate over into entrepreneurship or into the business world, but it wasn't easy, and I'm still learning every single day. But somebody talked about confidence earlier, and confidence goes a long way. If you study and you're prepared, and and you show that confidently, then you open up so many doors for yourself. So thank you for that question.
I'm curious, confidence has been mentioned so many times. Like, how do you assess that? What tips would you give a student? Is it just not saying, I don't have experience in this, and then talking about some amazing project that they did in one of their classes that is experience? Or what advice would you give to a college student? Because I find that as we work with them in the Career Center, many of them are struggling around that confidence piece. And to me, it's not because they don't have the experience or the skills, it's that they don't maybe know how to articulate those, or they're fearful that they don't have a specific knowledge that an employer is looking for. So any kind of thoughts around that? How do we boost the confidence of our students?
I mean, I would say being well-spoken, being able to hold a conversation during the interviews. It doesn't all have to be, one question, another question, so on and so forth, but being able to ask a little bit about maybe whoever's interviewing you. Hey, how'd you get started with the company? What do you like most about it? And the best interviews are the ones that are a genuine conversation, because we can show the value that they have to offer. And then from our standpoint, we can show that they will be able to speak on the phone to maybe our customers or vendors that we're working with. So I think that just that ability to communicate smoothly and effectively goes a long way.
I would agree. And I would also add, in our industry, where it's not typically an office setting, is more not necessarily having the experience, but believing in yourself. And even I've had them say to me, I may not know how to do that, but I promise you, no one wants to do it more than I do.
Megan, can you repeat the question, please, one more time?
Yeah, so the question was really just around confidence. How do you assess the confidence? What tips give the student to help them show confidence in the hiring process?
Preparation. If you are prepared to speak with the company that you're interviewing with, then you should show that when you open up your mouth to have that conversation. And express your genuine interest, and that'll come across, and do that confidently. And guess what? The things that you don't know, and don't worry about it. But yeah.
So we always encourage students to try to view an interview as a two-way street, right? It's a chance for the employer, you to understand them, but it's also a chance for them to understand the organization. So a question in that spirit: what do you love most about where you work? Why would it be a great fit for a recent college grad?
For me, it's the family culture that we have. We're not just a team member, but we're truly a family member. Everyone that comes into the organization is assimilated into that family.
So I think culture is a big one. It's a it's a pretty important question for most college grads, I think, because making the transition from the classroom to the corporate world isn't always easy, sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day. But in my opinion, our culture, I mean, it's fun, it's laid back, it's team oriented, and we also have a ton of autonomy, which can be good or bad depending upon the person. But there's no one sitting there hovering over you, asking you what you're doing at all hours of the day. So once you're in, you know what you're doing, you're off and running. You have peers that you can reach out to that are sitting around you if you need help. But I think that there's something to be said about the autonomy and being left alone and really taking ownership of your work that most people appreciate.
Agreed and agreed. That sounds like, yes, they have great companies, because I agree with what they're saying right now. Again, it's the atmosphere, the family environment. We say this, we have like these core values. One of them is collaborative and inspiring leadership. And we genuinely have that. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's difficult to go to work, but when you can go to work and be reminded that you're doing something good and be encouraged by someone else, and especially at a place where you have a career path and you can grow, like it's such a good feeling. So I would say definitely I agree with you all. Like, it's that culture, that family environment, and just being able to be inspired by the people that share the passion that you have. Yeah.
I'm curious, do your organizations check references? And if so, any tips you would give our students in terms of compiling their own references?
We don't. Personally, I think they're kind of a waste of time because there's only so much that you can get from one. Some people won't tell you a lot because of slander and so on and so forth. I don't know if you guys have dealt with this. And then also, anyone who has half of a brain isn't going to give a bad reference. So no, typically we do not.
And I would reiterate that I would advise just put references available upon request. So if the employer wants it, then you can give it to them.
I'm not certain that we do or not, but I don't think so. I haven't heard anything.
I mean, I would say most organizations don't, as Alex said, right? They're generally going to be positive, but we get a lot of questions from students, or they have them at the end of their resume, and we're like, you probably don't need them. And like as Angelina said, if someone asks, you want them ready to go, but they don't need to be a part of your application process. Kind of a broad question about the hiring processes. Are you using applicant tracking systems? Are you having candidates apply online? Any tips you could give of, how to make sure their resume gets seen by someone's eyes when they're applying online?
So we use an ATS, an applicant tracking system. It's not one that'll filter in and out based upon keywords though. So regardless, somebody's going to get a resume and we're able to look through it. With that being said, most candidates aren't aware that we use applicant tracking systems. So don't change the dates around on your resume, 1 month and then switch them around the next month. Don't ghost someone for an interview because that information, it's there. And a year later, if you decide you want to apply to the company, we will see that and it's still there.
Anyone else, anything to add on that?
Alex, you had it down. I believe we normally encourage folks to go to our website, /careers, and they can sign online and put in their cover letter and their resume and upload everything.
So we're moving towards the end of our time here. Students, any more questions that this conversation has triggered? Please. Or I think at this point, feel free to unmute yourself and ask as we wrap up. So one final question. What parting advice would you give? What have we not asked about that you were hoping to get to relay to these students today?
I'll go first. I think, yeah, because I know Angelina or Alex is just going to hit the nail right on the head. So I'll just say I think I got across everything that we wanted to get across, and it was great to see you all of your faces and to be with you today. Much appreciated.
We do have a final question that's come in from a student. What has impressed you the most in any interviews you've done in the past? Tell us that success story of the candidate that really knocked it out of the park.
So I can't think of one particular one, but I do like it when candidates go the extra mile. Typically, we allow the candidates to shadow in a non-COVID world, somebody that would be in the same position that they would be in. But it's not all the time, and sometimes they don't know that in advance. But when a candidate would say, hey, is there any way that I could shadow someone to get a better idea of what this position looks like and what I would be doing, I think that that's really impressive because it shows that they truly do care. And then going above and beyond, reaching out to, like I mentioned before, either while they're in the office or after the interview, reaching out and saying, hey, I have a few follow-up questions, either for a coordinator, that may be doing the same position, or for a hiring manager that I didn't think of, because it just shows that extra level of effort, and then that you really care and you're really interested in the position.
I think for me, what impressed me the most was a very basic entry-level position, but the confidence that the employee had that irregardless of the experience they could bring or not, they knew they wanted the job more than anybody else that I had spoken with. And to me, that was very impressive. He's definitely sold himself to me.
Well, on that, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in, and it's getting late in the evening, and I know many of you have commutes, or maybe you're sitting in your houses, who knows? But I'm getting hungry. So, Dr. Session, any final thoughts? Thank you, everyone, for being here. We really, really appreciate you sharing your perspectives and your expertise with our students. And as I said at the beginning, if you're comfortable with it, we'll be sharing this out over social media and email to some additional students. So, Dr. Session, anything you want to add?
This was great. Thank you all so much, Megan, your team, Angelina, Ramel, Alex. Your tips were very pointed and helpful for these students. Some are preparing to search, and it's a great time, I think, of the year to do it, to assist them in their plight. So thank you all for assisting. I look forward to continuing this type of event. Maybe we can do some different things in a non-COVID environment. But I would like to just use this and also expand upon the great work Megan is doing, or connect more students to what she's already doing at Career Center. So thank you all so much. This was awesome. Thanks again.
Thanks again, everyone. We're getting a lot of thank yous in from the students in the chat. So take a look at that if you haven't. And feel free to drop off, or if you've got time to hang around and maybe students have some individual questions afterwards, you can do that as well. So again, thank you all for being here. Great advice.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Session. I thought it was a good event, good turnout.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Great job putting this together. You did excellent.
We'll be, like I said, happy to do something like this in the future. And I'll be honest, I mean, for the employer,